Okay, folks, this is Jason Van Tatenhove with Oath Keepers. I'm here with Mike Adams of Natural News with episode 2 of our winter prepping series. Mike, how you doing today? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Jason, I am doing great. Thanks for the invitation. I'm happy to join you and help spread some good information here.
Awesome. Well, we were hoping to talk with you about the idea of prepping your body for winter. You know, everyone's thinking about, fuel storage and how to deal with your storable food with freezing and making sure you have enough wood on hand or kerosene and heating your home. But I think a lot of people don't think about what we need to do to prep our bodies for winter, and that there's definitely something to that. So I figured you'd be the best person that I know of anyway to talk about that. So.
Well, absolutely. Again, thanks for the invite. Just a little background for those of your listeners who might not be familiar with my work. I've been a long-time nutritionist. I'm a science lab director at for clean food testing, elemental analysis, and I'm also a patriot, a concealed carry holder, and a long-range target shooter. So one of the things that I'm doing, just skill-wise right now, is brushing up on all my long-range shooting with my 338 Lapua, and this winter I'm stretching out to about 1,350 yards. That's what I'm working on right now. So never hurts to be able to reach out like that, right?
No, and it's actually kind of funny you mentioned that. I was talking to one of the other people kind of higher up in the Oath Keepers organization, Mouse, a lot of people know. He was telling me how his big push this winter has been his long-range shooting as well. He took and traded in a couple of other guns for a really nice long-range rifle and has been just training with it and just loving it. So I think a lot of people, we all have our ARs and our sidearms, but that long range is definitely, I know myself personally, I've got to get more brushed up on it.
It's, if you don't mind me taking a tangent on this, I love long range shooting because at the same time that I'm a science lab director and I run all this instrumentation, to me, long range target shooting has a lot of the same methodology and mathematics. You're doing a lot of unit conversion, just like you are in the lab. When I study long range shooting, it makes instant sense to me because I'm so familiar with a lot of the mathematics of laboratory analysis, and it feels so good to be able to really do the math, do the modeling, understand the ballistics, and have some good glass, and put a bullet on target, first shot, cold bore shot, and to be able to hit that at even 700 yards or 1,000 yards, it's just it's a great feeling. It's very rewarding for me.
Yeah, I don't do the math side of things, but I do the hunting, and I try to do as best I can with long-range shooting, but I'm not able to do those calculations. Again, it's part of my skill set I definitely have to add to. I need to go to a good class for it and learn how to do all that. And definitely on my upcoming training sessions.
Well, you got to get down to West Texas then and get down to accuracy first. And that's the system I use, their Ballistic Software and all their systems. It's really fantastic. It makes instant sense. He's got simplified formulas for windage correction, things like that. It's just fantastic. Anyway, I didn't mean to get off target. Topic.
No, we kind of want to go where the conversation takes us. So, but let's get back to winter prepping. So, let's talk about what people need to think about when they are looking at prepping their body for the coming winter.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I want to address is the myth of what is healthy going into the winter. If you look at bodybuilding magazines and you look at mainstream media and so on, they try to present bodies that are really ripped and really low body fat as this image of being healthy and strong. That's a complete myth. When you're going into the winter, you actually need body fat, especially if you're living up north like you are. You need more body fat in the winter, and the cycle of human nutrition is supposed to be that you actually store fat in the fall. You use fat in the winter. It's an insulation. Let's face it. It actually gives you insulation, keeps you warmer, and then in the spring you're actually letting go of fat because you're more active. You're outdoors more. You're sweating more. You're eating more spring greens and things like that. Homegrown lettuce. Hopefully you know how to grow some of your own food, and that's when you let go of your fat. And then in the summer, you're hot, so you want to be more lean in the summer. And then this cycle repeats. So number one, I want to make people aware that your level of body fat should actually cycle with the seasons. And that's not something that people have ever really heard before.
Now, what kind of fats should they be looking at intaking? Where are they going to get them from?
Well, what I recommend is do not fatten up off of carbohydrates. That will give you diabetes or hypoglycemia. So you don't want to fatten up on corn. That's what cattle are doing. They feed cattle genetically modified corn to fatten them up in the minimum amount of time, and it's really not healthy for them. But most of those cattle don't live but a few years anyway, so they don't really have the time to develop diabetes. Otherwise, you'd see a lot of diabetic cows all over the place, which would be odd. But humans, if you just keep eating carbohydrates, you're gonna eventually probably get something like type 2 diabetes. So healthy fats are the answer. Healthy fats obviously include all the plant-based fats like avocados, chia seeds, flax seeds, anything like that. But also some saturated animal fat, I believe, is very important for the winter. Uh, some people, there are vegans and vegetarians out there who say you should never eat animal fat or animal products. And I disagree with that. I think you need to eat clean meats and clean animal fats. In other words, from free range cows, not injected with crazy hormones and chemicals and all these other, toxic substances, and preferably not fed genetically modified grain. So what you really want to find is somebody, a rancher that you know, who will butcher a cow every once in a while, and you'll be able to purchase, a quarter of that cow and have some freezer space. You'll get bones, you get meat, you get different cuts of meat, and also the healthy fat. Now, bones are really, really important for winter because even in Chinese medicine, they recommend doing what's called a bone broth soup. And you take just a big cut of bone and gristle, right out of the butcher shop, and you throw it in a pot of water and you boil that. And you really boil it for several hours, and then you throw in some other things like some carrots or celery or onions or whatever you want, even some quinoa if you want to do that. And you create a bone broth soup. This soup is very, very invigorating for cold times. And in fact, I've actually heard of vegans rescuing themselves from really being chilled and cold all the time by having a big, big bowl of bone broth soup. And it restored their energy, their vitality, even their ability to think. So I want you to think about the value of bone broth soup. I don't want you to overconsume meat and meat fat. You shouldn't be having bacon every day. There are problems with bacon with the sodium nitrite that's added to it, right? But do your meat in moderation, but understand that it does have a very important role in being healthy and warm and comfortable during a winter, and especially in a survival winter scenario. You're going to need a lot of heavy duty calories from animal fat, and I'm talking about lard, for example. Like if you're in a survival situation and it's the winter and it's very, very cold and you're actually threatened by the cold, you can use lard with, let's say, dehydrated potatoes, for example. Just boil the potatoes, get those, add some butter, add some lard, add some salt. That is a meal that will keep you alive in the winter.
Great. No, I got a question for you. So up here in the Great White North, where I live in northern Montana, a lot of us don't really eat much meat other than the meat that we hunt. I know that my freezer is mostly filled with venison and elk that I take, and we use that through the year from hunting. And it's so plentiful up here that most people, they don't buy much meat at the store.
Yeah.
They're only eating because, your friends are giving it to you. It's just all over the place. So when you're on a diet with that, those are both very, very lean meats.
Right.
Do you need to supplement some other fat, like beef fat or whatnot, into that to help bolster, like you're talking about?
Not really. Not if you're using the fat parts of the animal when you process it. It's actually important during the processing of animals that are hunted to keep the fat with the meat and not just try to get lean cuts, whether it's deer or elk, as you mentioned, or in Texas, even wild hogs. Some people harvest wild hogs for meat. They tend to have a lot more fat, by the way, so not a problem there. But I don't think you need to add lard to it from other sources. If you're getting wild game meat, it's so clean to begin with. It's such a high quality meat. I would just go with that and just make sure you're consuming the fat that is available with that animal. Just, in other words, don't discard the fat.
Gotcha. Well, Mike, what are some of the ways that we can boost our immune system? We know that coming in the fall, the school year starts, and it's just a season for the flu. You've got these vaccine pushers telling you that the answer is the flu vaccine, and we know that's just not the case. That's a whole lot of propaganda, and you're much better off not taking that vaccine, because they admittedly it's never the right strain. It never really does anything. It's just kind of a big fraud, and more dangerous than anything. But what can we do naturally to avoid getting sick? How can we bolster our immune system coming into the winter season when all these flus and colds are going around?
It's very simple. The answer is vitamin D. Remember that in the winter, your body is using up stores of vitamin D that it puts away in the liver. Now, in the spring and the summer, when you have more sunlight exposure, that ultraviolet radiation is interacting with your skin to produce vitamin D, which is really a pre-hormone. It's not technically a vitamin. It's a pre-hormone, and then your skin reabsorbs that transdermally, obviously, and vitamin D3 then is transformed by your kidneys, and it circulates in your blood, and it is absolutely crucial for immune system function. You can think of vitamin D as a genetic code activator. Almost 25% of your genetic code, and a lot of people don't know this, but almost 25% is geared towards protecting you from invading microbes, parasites, and other microorganisms. You come from a long line of survivors, your ancestors, who lived and survived and reproduced long before vaccines ever came into existence, which, by the way, completely blows away the whole vaccine argument that you need a vaccine to survive. No, you don't. How did you even get here if your ancestors, there were no vaccines, So how did they survive? The answer is they had immunity. Your immune system will build its own antibodies to exposure to influenza, sometimes in a symptomless way, meaning you won't even get a sniffle, you won't get a fever, nothing. You won't even know you were exposed. Your body is exposed to it, it builds antibodies, but it needs vitamin D in order to activate the genetic code that builds the proteins necessary for this process to happen. So when you're vitamin D deficient, and by the way, if you're listening to this and you are dark-skinned, and the darker your skin, the more you need to listen up, the more sunblock you have to ultraviolet radiation in your skin pigmentation, meaning the more deficient you're going to be in vitamin D, especially during the winter months. So you need to boost up that vitamin D through oral supplementation, especially during the winter. Another benefit of that is that vitamin D helps halt the growth of cancer tumors. We know from studying cancer quite in depth that people who are diagnosed with cancer tumors, those tumors have usually been growing for 10, sometimes 20 or 25 years. But they only grow typically in the winter. A lot of people don't know this either. The tumors are halted in their growth during the summer and the spring months because that's when people are getting sunlight and vitamin D. When that vitamin D runs out and they're deficient, that's when the tumor grows in the winter. And so you can halt tumor growth all year round in most cases by just having good vitamin D stores in your liver, which means oral consumption of vitamin D supplements. So anyway, to me, that's the most important supplement for immune boosting and immunity, period. The flu vaccine is a complete hoax. It's absolute quackery. It does not work. It's usually the wrong strain. And even if it does work, it does not give your body a full strength immune response to the influenza virus. It gives you a half-assed response that may not protect you. So the best way to build immunity to influenza is to have a strong immune system and then actually be exposed to influenza and allow your body to build the antibodies itself in response to the live virus, not a weakened virus like they use in vaccines.
What about magnesium? I've heard we're as a country just very deprived of magnesium, and that also plays a role in the immune system. Is that good information, or is that not so?
Yeah, that's good information. I wouldn't put it at the top of my list of immunity. Magnesium, usually that deficiency is related to cardiovascular events, high blood pressure, heart attacks, that kind of thing. Magnesium is very, very important. It carries oxygen in your blood cells. So, or I should say it's part of it, part of what carries oxygen. It's part of the molecules that carry oxygen in your blood cells. So you need magnesium. You need it in every cell. But for immunity, I think zinc is actually a better focus. Zinc, a lot of people are zinc deficient. Zinc not only boosts immune function, but it also accelerates skin repair. If you have skin damage, if you have a cut, an injury, a wound, if it's not healing very quickly, it could be because you're zinc deficient. So going into a winter or even a survival situation, you need to be vitamin D ready and zinc ready, and also magnesium ready for that matter. Think about this too. a lot of people are prepping these days, right? They're prepping for an EMP attack, or who knows, a terrorist attack. Maybe ISIS gets activated across America and blows up a bunch of refineries or something. There's a fuel shortage. You're not going to be able to go out and get vitamin D supplements. The stores are going to be wiped out. The pharmacies, forget it. Those are going to be death zones. If you show up at a pharmacy in a collapse, you better bring your shotgun, because everybody else is going to be there first trying to get all the medications. So don't count on being able to go out and get this stuff if there's an emergency. You better be prepared with the nutrition that you need. And the best place to have those nutritional stores actually is in your body. Your liver will store vitamin D for months. Some vitamins you can't store very well, like vitamin C actually is gone in 24 hours. So you got to take that every day. But vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. So it will actually be stored in your liver. And some doctors, for vitamin D deficient patients, they'll prescribe something like 50,000 IUs at a time. I'm not recommending that. That's a lot. You need to work with a doctor if you think you even need that. But that 50,000 IUs can last a person several months. So there's a lot to learn about this. I'm just scratching the surface.
Now, you mentioned vitamin C there. I know that a lot of people are getting their vitamin C from ascorbic acid, and I've heard from other people that I've talked to on my radio show and whatnot that is not such a good source to get your vitamin C from. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on this have really changed recently because I've done a lot of study on vitamin C and what you mentioned, ascorbic acid. Here's my opinion on this. Ascorbic acid is actually, it can be a very, very therapeutic source of vitamin C. However, you don't want to get it from China. Most of the ascorbic acid is derived from genetically modified corn that's processed in China in the chemical laboratories. I searched for months to actually find and bottle, we're actually rolling this out, some ascorbic acid supplements that are manufactured, the raw materials made in Ireland. Not China. And it is very therapeutic in that form because it's so potent. Now, the other form that I recommend is sodium ascorbate, which is simply ascorbic acid that's buffered with the sodium mineral base. So that is easier to put into smoothies. It tastes more neutral. It's not tangy. It's not highly acidic. However, see, you asked me a question, like it's opening a can of worms. There's so many angles to go on this, but ascorbic acid in pill form, in a capsule form actually, can be very, very useful for a lot of people during meals. And here's why. Many people have weak gastric acid and they have incomplete digestion of the foods they're consuming. This causes indigestion. And unfortunately, they tend to take alkaline supplements like Tums, thinking that they're too acidic. But in my experience, most people are actually not acidic enough. That's why they're not digesting. So if you actually take ascorbic acid in capsule form or powder form during a meal, it can enhance digestion and help eliminate indigestion and actually decrease things like uric acid crystals, which can circulate in your blood, lodge in your joints, and cause you to think you have rheumatoid arthritis when you really don't. So I'm going to be recommending that people consider taking ascorbic acid with meals, and this is especially true for charred meats or anything that is cooked or slightly burned or charred or barbecued. The vitamin C that's in the pills counteracts the carcinogenic effects of the burned parts of the meats that you're eating. And this is also true with, you've heard about beef jerky and pepperoni and all these processed meats cause cancer, right? Well, that's because of the sodium nitrate that's added to them, which is a color fixer and also an antibacterial agent that prevents botulism. But if you take vitamin C with the meal at the same time that you're eating these hot dogs or pepperoni or whatever, the vitamin C blocks the nitrosamine forming action of the sodium nitrite. In other words, buffering or blocking the carcinogenic process. And I'm not trying to get too technical, but vitamin C taken during a meal can have a very powerful protective effect.
Awesome. Great. I had no idea. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about say we're prepping. Let's say there might be a grid down scenario. How important, we talked about pharmacies not being overrun, ransacked, whatnot. How do you feel people should be prepping for antibiotics? Do we need to have some on hand? If so,
Yes.
do we want to go get some of these pet store type antibiotics? What's the best way to store those up, or are there alternatives that we should be looking at?
There are really, I think, three approaches to this. One of them, like you said, is typically fish antibiotics, right? You can go online, you can buy antibiotics for your fish aquarium. Here's the danger in that. Unless you are really well informed about the proper dosage, how many milligrams, for example, of this chemical per kilogram of body weight of the person that you're treating, unless you know those formulas or have a reference book for those formulas, you could probably kill somebody because you don't know what you're doing. So I want to put that alert out there. Secondly, these antibiotic chemicals are very, very different in the kinds of tissues that they're able to get to. Some antibiotics are really, really good at getting to the lungs. Other antibiotics are completely useless at that. Some go to the genital area and are good for prostate or reproductive organs, for example. Others are completely useless. So, ear infections are going to be treated differently from lung infections. And if you don't know this information, you're just shooting in the dark. So it's kind of like, you don't want to give somebody like a full auto rifle if they've never gone through a gun safety class. You know what I mean? So if you're going to use antibiotics, you need to know what the hell you're doing. The second approach to this, which has a lot more leeway for miscalculation, is to go with plant-based antibiotics. And there's some excellent books out there that cover all the herbal antibiotics that are available. In fact, I think that's the title of one of the books you can get on Amazon. It's just called Herbal Antibiotics. And I recommend you get some of these books and keep them as a reference. But if you're going to do that, you need to be growing as many of these herbs as you can. So growing them means you got to have some kind of a grow system. Well, I invented the Food Rising mini farm grow box system. You can find that online at foodrising.org. I'll show you how to make your own. You can make it out of almost any container. It's very cheap and easy to make. And you can grow basil, and you can grow cilantro. You can grow, all kinds of lemon balm herbs, thyme, rosemary, all these things. And I strongly recommend that you do that. The third approach to this is essential oils. Essential oils are, of course, the distillate concentrates of these medicinal herbs that you could grow yourself. These oils, some of them are used externally, some are internally, some are both. And I'm talking about like eucalyptus, peppermint oil, sandalwood oil, all these things, lots of essential oils out there. In my opinion, every person's medicine chest should include a full complement of essential oils. Once again, you have to know what you're doing with them. So I recommend you buy a reference book. You don't have to memorize it. Just have the book on your shelf where you can go to that book and you can look up which oil is good for what thing. The same thing you should have for antibiotics. You should have that reference book on the shelf. You don't have to memorize it. You just have to be able to know where to find that information when the internet's down, right? So in both of these cases, and I actually recommend you do the whole spectrum if you can, have some fish antibiotics, which are hardcore, isolated chemicals, very potent, very dangerous. Have some herbs that you're growing, more mild, easier to use on people with a wider safety margin, but sometimes not as effective for acute infections. And then thirdly, go for the essential oils and know how to use them.
All right. Well, what else do you think we need to be thinking of when getting ready for winter in this prepping your body line of thought?
Well, gosh, there's so many areas to cover here. I want to say that be mindful of who you're hanging around with if there is infectious disease going around. Most people are not healthy. Most people are taking the flu shots, which means their immune systems are compromised. They've been injected with aluminum and mercury. Most people have really crappy diets. Most people do not eat well. They don't have good vitamin D, for example. So it is other people that are the greatest risk to infecting you. So whatever scenario you're in, maybe everything's fine. You're having a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year celebration, and there are no terrorist attacks. There is no collapse. All the lights are on. Everything's cool. But still, other people are your greatest risk because they are the carriers and they don't take care of their own health. Now, in a collapse scenario, if crazy stuff hits the fan this winter and you find yourself in a desperate situation, an infection can quite literally kill you. Infection of the wrong disease. And it turns out that infections spread very, very quickly once basic services break down. Even infections that right now are treatable in the hospital, people don't have access to that in a collapse scenario. But also, even right now, hospitals can kill you with their superbugs. So you can go into a hospital for a relatively minor procedure. They can infect you with something like C. diff. A C. diff will kill you. It kills thousands of people a year. Right now, superbug deaths are very, very high, thousands. So really protecting your immune system, and also having some items that can sanitize surfaces is also very important. So having some povidone iodine on hand, first aid iodine, having some surface sanitizers on hand is very important. Some bleach obviously is very important. If things get crazy, you need to keep your environment as clean as possible. That's how you're going to protect your health.
Mike, what are your thoughts on ionic silver and colloidal silver? I know a lot of people that are in my community swear by. I've used it to great effect, but again, I defer to your judgment because I know that you've really studied in depth on this stuff. So, what are your
Yes.
thoughts?
I love it. I love ionic silver, colloidal silver, but also ionic copper. Both silver and copper have very, very strong antibacterial properties. They destroy the cell membranes of bacteria, and if you it almost doesn't even matter what parts per million concentration they are. I know there's a lot of debate among different manufacturers. One company is like, oh, ours is 10 parts per million. Another company says, well, that's too high. It should be 1 part per million silver. There's a lot of debate, but they're all effective to some degree, all of them. What's great about colloidal silver is that you can make your own, right? And if you have just a generator, even powered with something as small as a 9-volt battery, can actually create a certain amount of colloidal silver that can be very, very effective for you. And you don't even have to have very pure silver if you're going to use it topically. So a lot of people who make colloidal silver, they like to use 4/9 silver, but maybe you don't have 4/9 silver. Maybe you only have 3/9. Maybe you have a silver coin. You can actually make colloidal silver out of a silver coin, and you can use that topically on your skin. You can put it under bandages. If you get a burn wound, you can put colloidal silver under the bandage on the wound, and it will prevent the skin infection. This should be used globally in burn wards. It should be used everywhere in emergency first aid situations, but it's not. Now, for internal use, let me mention this. Internal use is also, there's a very wide safety margin, but it is not something to be consumed every single day like drinking, Pepsi or something. You don't want to drink it every day, year after year. But it's not at all harmful to drink this if you're trying to treat an acute infection that's reachable through your gastrointestinal tract. However, if you do that, remember you're going to destroy your intestinal flora. It's going to screw up your digestion and compromise your immune system. So you need to take probiotics after using colloidal silver internally to reestablish the healthy flora of your digestive tract. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak personally to that. My wife, as many of our viewers know, suffers from Crohn's disease, and the best way we found to put her into remission was actually through a gut flora kill-off using colloidal silver that we generated ourselves at home, and then we repopulated her gut flora with a live enzyme from raw milk. We made a kefir out of it, and through that kefir, she never did better, and really put her right into remission, and took care of that side of her issues through that method. So I can personally vouch that absolutely is a very powerful tool. Now, you had mentioned ionic copper. Can you use, like I use the silver lungs generator. I like using the generator because I can specify 20 parts or 40 parts. It spells it out. I was concerned at first because you heard these stories about the blue man and whatnot, and it seemed to be
just scare stories. That's nonsense.
But it seems like they already have everything figured out for you. It's easy to do, and I was concerned about not getting it right, trying to build one myself.
Silver lungs is great. I own one of those too. And what's great about that is you have that nebulizer for inhaling it. I think if we had something like a pandemic breakout of Ebola, or even like let's say a drug-resistant tuberculosis, which is out there, if something like that really began to spread, I think that inhaling colloidal silver into your lungs could be really life-saving. That's my opinion. The CDC will probably disagree. They'll say, no, you need poison vaccine. But I think that silver lungs could save a lot of lives. Now, Here's something interesting. If you study the table of elements, remember from physics class in high school or chemistry class, and I work with this table every day in the lab. If you look at it, you'll notice that copper and silver and gold are all in the same column. It's in the section of the table called transition metals. And these metals are very dynamic in the way they interact with other atoms and form molecules or break apart molecules. Copper, and when they're in the same column, they have similar effects, similar type of actions. So copper is the lighter element, and then silver is a heavier element than copper, and on top of that then is gold. So not only are copper and silver antimicrobial, gold is in essence impervious to microbes and can be used, for example, in dental work, preventing microbes from infesting cavities and infecting teeth. At the same time, what's also interesting is that these three metals in that series document the history of metallurgy and weapons. So in Roman times, weapons were often made out of copper, and the coins were copper. And then coins later on, became more silver, and then gold. The economy now is more based on gold as a backup currency. So even the alloys became more complex over time, using heavier and heavier metals to make things like modern day stainless steel with traces of chromium and nickel and so on. So it's just a fascinating thing. If you look at the table of elements, it actually tells a story. Sorry, I might sound like a geek for saying that, but it's the truth.
That's why I love you, because I can pick your brain on this stuff and find new things to go research. So the copper, real quick, you said you can do like ionic silver, but with copper. Could I do that with like a silver lung system by just finding copper rods or copper coin?
Yes, absolutely. You can just replace silver with copper, run the same system. Now, your parts per million is going to be different because it's going to ionize more quickly. The ionization potential of copper is lower than silver typically, depending on what molecule it's in. But if you play with it, use the measurement that you have. You can shine a red laser through it. You can look at the visual aspects of the solution to give you an indicator. But yeah, basically they're interchangeable.
Wow, I'm going to start looking into that quite a bit.
Yeah, it's great. I think in a collapse, I think that copper and silver solutions for treating infections are going to be huge. I think it's going to be revolutionary for the knowledge of copper and silver in this context, because antibiotics are going to be very, very hard to get. They're going to run out. And most of the antibiotics that are manufactured today are synthesized in laboratories in places like India and Puerto Rico. And in a collapse, you're not going to be able to get those shipments in. So they're going to run out. But what do we have in America? We have copper and we have silver. If you have silver coins, you can make medicine. You just have to know how to hook up the electrodes and create a potential across distilled water. Obviously, you got to be able to distill water, so it's good to have something like a water-wise distiller that can use heat and create distilled water out of well water or something. But if you can make distilled water and you have silver coins, you can make medicine. It's amazing. You still there?
Well, I'm going to be actually putting on a demonstration at our CPT, or Community Preparedness Team, local meeting here tomorrow, actually. So, folks, if you're listening, you want to see how you actually produce something like ionic silver, I'll be putting that video up in the next couple weeks. So,
right on. And don't forget that you can treat bandages with this. Let me share something here that's super, super valuable for everybody. You can take bandages like wound dressing, cotton, gauze, that kind of thing. You can soak it in a colloidal silver solution and then dry it out. And then, it's obviously not going to be sanitary at that point. You're going to have bacteria in it from the drying process, but it's going to be impregnated with the silver. So what you can do at that point is you can pasteurize it yourself and create a sterile silver-infused wound bandage yourself at home. And
how do you pasteurize? Just with the silver itself?
No, with heat. You just pasteurize it with heat. You can heat it to an appropriate temperature. You can look it up online right now. Heat it for a certain amount of time at a certain temperature, and that will kill any bacteria. You can steam treat it. That also kills the bacteria. But the point is that if you soak it in colloidal silver and then dry it, the silver stays impregnated in it. Now you have a silver-infused wound bandage that is better than anything the military is using today, just so you know.
That's good too. I'm gonna have to look into that. I do have an old autoclave here, and if you
Oh,
don't have an autoclave, you can
perfect.
actually
There.
use a pressure cooker the same way. It works the same way an
Exactly.
autoclave does. So
Yeah, autoclave. I should have mentioned that. That's the solution. Just autoclave it. You're done. It's perfect.
yeah,
So I mean, also think about this in a post-collapse scenario. If you need a business to run, you need something that you can barter. How freaking valuable would it be to be able to barter silver-infused wound bandages that have been autoclaved, and they're sterile and they're infused with silver? That would be incredibly valuable.
yeah. I think I'm gonna have to put together a whole barter kit for that. You're full of great ideas. All right,
Great. All right. Well, what else
well,
you want to talk about?
well, Mike, is there anything else you want to touch on as far as the winter prepping goes? I think we hit a good number of topics for that. And we,
I think we covered a lot of ground there. Just make sure that you can survive without winter heat in case something happens. Make sure you have appropriate cold weather sleeping bags and all that kind of thing, so you could camp inside your home if you had to.
all right. Well, okay. We'll end that part of the interview right there. So let's go ahead and maybe talk about a current event. You want to talk about the ISIS thing and maybe the propaganda around it? What do you want to talk? You want to talk about the? We could even talk about the story you just talked about on Drudge.
Well, it's hard to know where to begin. Every day I wake up and I'm more and more convinced that President Obama is actually working with ISIS, that he wants America to be overrun and invaded and destroyed. ISIS hates the West, and so does Obama, and so do all these liberal media people and journalists who hate America. They hate the founders. They hate the Constitution. It's sick. It's sick that we see this out there now. It's absolutely sickening, and that our own president won't even. I mean, think about it. He says that gun owners in America are the greatest threat, but not ISIS. Like ISIS is our friend, but veterans are the danger. Give me a break. I don't even know that I can talk about this that much. I get so emotional about it.
Well, let me ask you this. If that is the case, if we find that the president really is kind of his own sleeper cell, it seems, and that's just based on his actions, what can we do about it? It seems like the Congress won't impeach. No one will impeach. No one will hold him accountable. He's disregarding the legal system and moving forward with his own set of laws and his own way of making them. So what can you and I do really to put a stop to this? How can we reclaim
Honestly,
our country?
the system is paralyzed. The Republican establishment are nothing but cowards. And I know there are exceptions to that, like Ted Cruz, has said some good things, and Donald Trump seems to have backbone on many issues. So there are certain individuals like that. Ted Cruz probably would be the most qualified president we could have right now. But the system is paralyzed. The system is broken. I think, on a personal note, the best thing we can all do right now is prepare and wait, because there will be a day that we probably have to take action to defend America, to restore America, to defend the Constitution. That day is probably coming, and it might be nationwide attacks by ISIS, and you might have to defend your local community, your local families. You might have to partner up with your local sheriff's deputies and defend your community. Who knows? That day is coming. Right now, it's useless to march on Washington right now. I mean, what's the point? There's not enough to make that much of a difference, and the country's full of insane people. Look at the college campuses. They're all insane communists. They're actual commies now running the colleges. So I think right now, prepare and wait. Boost up your skills, boost up your immune system, learn all these things that we just talked about, colloidal silver, get more precious metals, and, educate yourself, learn, be informed, watch videos, practice skills, learn how to live in the country, learn how to live off the grid, be more self-reliant, collect rainwater, grow your food. I mean, and then if nothing bad happens, you're still awesome because you're growing your own food and you're living in the country and you're living the good life. So that's my advice.
Yeah, and folks, one great way to start learning those skills and start plugging into the community around you for this type of interaction is through our CPT program, which is the Community Preparedness Teams. Check out the CPT teams in your area. You get information on our website, oathkeepers.org. We have a whole section of CPT with videos and how-tos and instructional manuals. So go check it out. Join Oath Keepers, get involved, plug in, and start training, getting ready. So.
Good advice. Good advice. And hey, if you don't mind me inserting this point, on a radio show that I'm running soon, my topic is why, when it hits the fan, I'm siding with local law enforcement. I think, and I live in the country, so I've got good sheriffs out here. I'm not talking about like corrupt city PDs, but out in the country, we got to remember that law enforcement will need your help to keep your community safe. No matter what comes down, whether it's drug gangs coming up from Mexico crossing the border, or ISIS, or who knows what, invading foreign troops for all we know. Whatever it is, you need to be able to work with your community to create security for your community. I'm talking about blocking the roads, covering the bridges, short range, long range, providing ammunition, providing hardware to law enforcement. If they need it, if they're working with you, if they're constitutional, let me say that. If they're constitutional, work with them. But if they're trying to confiscate your guns and take away your rights, that's a different story. I'm not even going to talk about that. I'm talking about constitutional, sheriffs and law enforcement that want to provide safe communities. We got to be on their side, in my opinion.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that'd be great. We'll just do something to quick wrap up here. Okay, folks, it's been Mike Adams with us, the Health Ranger. Mike, let our listeners know where they can check out your work, naturalnews.com, what projects you got going on right now. Where can people get more plugged into what you're doing?
Well, number one, we built a search engine that focuses entirely on the alternative media, and that's goodgopher.com. And gopher is just like it sounds, Gopher. Go to goodgopher.com, search for anything there. You're going to get no BS from the mainstream media, no government propaganda, just independent alternative media. The second thing you can do is you can watch headlines all day long at alternativenews.com. That's a news aggregation site that we built. The third thing, this is awesome, you're going to love this, fetch.news is also a topic-focused news aggregation site that monitors topics from across the entire independent media, but focus on the topics that you want, including government agencies. So we have a way to monitor all the news about the FBI, the FDA, FEMA, the NSA, and the TSA, and so on, but also topics like survival and liberty and vitamin D, immunity, all those things, about 200 different topics. You can check that out at fetch.news. And these are all systems that I built. Well, I should say I designed them. I designed the data structure, but I had teams build them. And this is all about empowering the independent media to reach people, even if they try to ban our websites or ban our speech. We're going to have options like these websites I just mentioned. So if Google bans, Oath Keepers websites, it doesn't matter if people go to goodgopher.com, because we're going to feature those websites, or fetch.news. We're going to carry the news. So we have to build the alternative internet, and this is one of the steps that I'm doing to contribute to that effort.
Now, can people that are listening that have their own alternative news websites and radio shows and whatnot, how can they plug into that?
Oh, well, they can submit their sites on goodgopher.com, and then we'll start spidering them. And then everything that you post on your website, if it's a news item, it will be carried. It'll be syndicated automatically across all of the fetch.news aggregation monitoring sites. And so this is huge. This is free of charge. There's no fee to do this. If you run an alternative news website, get it posted on goodgopher.com. You should see it come up live in the searches within a few days, and then you should start seeing your stories coming up on the fetch.news websites as well.
Very cool. All right. Well, are we able to talk about the .news program you're doing, or is that something that's more behind the scenes?
No, yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay.
So we've been inviting a lot of authors, especially those that are liberty oriented, to join us and have a website with us on our network. We purchased about 500 of the .news domains, and we've got some great ones. We've got a guy running right now, guns.news, liberty.news, freedom.news, nationalsecurity.news, and a lot of other sites too focus on more popular topics. Like we have stupid.news just to highlight things that the liberals are doing these days. That's really funny. We have cyberwar.news and many others. But anyway, people can join us and we'll set up the site for them. They can write for us. They earn the ad revenue from all the pages, and we run the whole system for them, including the search engine indexing and the syndication and all that. So if they're interested in joining us in that, they can contact me through Natural News.
I'll say that I'm a part of that as well. I've just launched resist.news this last week. It's been putting up articles every day. And folks, check it out, resist.news.
Right on. I'm looking at resist.news metrics right now. And that just launched a few days ago, right?
3 days, I think it's been live.
Okay. So today so far, and we're only like 2/3 of the way through the day, resist.news has 800 visitors. Not a lot, but it just launched. Some of the other websites
For being
have
3 days old, that's amazing.
Yeah. It's because of our syndication and our social media strategy. Freedom.news today has over 4,000 visitors. And every day across these sites, we are now averaging between 50 and 100,000 visitors. And a month ago, that was only between 10 and 30,000 visitors. So we've tripled our reach in 1 month across all of these .news domains. And this system is working like gangbusters. We're getting readers, we're getting attention, we're getting syndication, and it is all 100% liberty oriented. I did a recording welcoming new people to the program. Maybe you even heard it yourself.
I did.
It says, if you're anti-Second Amendment, you're not welcome here. You can't use our technology unless you support the Second Amendment, period. So, I'm taking a stand and I'm sticking with it. If you hate America, you're not going to work with me. Forget it. You go find somebody else that wants to work with you. But if you love America, I welcome you.
That's the way to do it, my friend. I'm honored to be a part of it.
Well, we're honored to have you on, Jason, and anyone else who wants to join us. We're working our butts off here to try to make this work and protect America from what's coming. It's coming down.
That is all right. Well, we'll end things up there. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk with you again soon, Mike.
All right, thank you, Jason. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with your audience there.